My name is Russell Greco. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Planning at Battalion Oil. We use the Pod2 planner for operational scheduling. We use it for scenario analysis and ultimately corporate level cash flows and some M&A related exercises. So the planner is absolutely a part of our certainly weekly check-ins from an operational standpoint. We're a small organization, so it's very collaborative. All the disciplines work together closely. And so they all have their hands in either planner or planner adjacent workflows. And so that's where it's been nice to all have a common application that we can quickly pull up and look and see, what are we drilling next? What do the next 3 to 6 months look like? And then inevitably there are large changes to our schedule. Maybe that's just an us problem, but I doubt it. We're always, I feel like, making large changes to schedules, to well order. There's always some new surface issue that we're trying to work through to make sure that we're prepared for the next 3 to 6 months. And that's where the planner, as well as some of our other, land, legal, and operational workflows kind of all meet. Kind of the crossroads, if you will, for all those pieces. It's kind of tiered, this nice little thing called production. And it's key that we are able to try to have some sense about how much it's going to grow, what the profiles look like, and being able to quickly reconfigure that, meaning like the timing of things and how that plays out, is really helpful. We are taking the players' production profiles and kind of using them at face value and quickly comparing back to different versions or different plans. That's helpful. Ultimately, it's getting exported, the timing especially, into a couple different tools. And then those ultimately roll up into our corporate, either reserves or corporate cash flows. We do short-term for sure. Long-term, we are using at least the first year or two. We're trying to plan out that far. After that, we've got some interesting things in the works. We're always trying to figure out, okay, how can we dump more inventory in, plan longer, knowing that's going to change, but that it's a much better tool to kind of plan that. We're also looking, we've played around with it on the M&A side, because a lot of times if you're going to have to reconfigure, if you're going to have to bring an asset in and then drill a bunch of new locations that maybe right now are more generic because it's a potential asset, right? You don't have all the details. Just being able to quickly reconfigure a schedule and integrate it into your existing schedule is a great way to build a pro forma view of production, which is super helpful. And then when you have that pro forma view production, then you can again export it into your various economic tools to start layering in that component. There are no compelling planning tools in the space that are as clean or as functional or as fast. I think that's the key thing. There are other tools. You can certainly build your own Gantt charts. You can build your own horse blankets, as I call it, a rainbow of colors in a spreadsheet that gives you some kind of operational tapestry. But the fact is, there's just not a tool that works as well or as quick and integrates as well with a lot of things in and out. Clunky. So that was the need. It was one of those no-brainers where it was like, okay, if we're going to get serious about operational schedules and being able to reconfigure them and then export and import data, right? That's the key, right? You guys do a great job of not making it an island. You make it you have a bunch of canals. You connect well to other things and you play nice, which is helpful. For Battalion, we run a very lean organization and we don't run 20 rigs. I think that there's value to this tool, had value with that scale and our scale. But for us, the key is when we change assets and drill orders dynamically, and specifically, this past year, we had a decision to make where we were running into midstream constraints on one asset. So that planner helped us effectively range the risk of that outcome. Would we have the capacity to take the product out of that asset? That's one thing that you guys were invaluable. The other thing is that whenever we changed and said, okay, we're going to be drilling at asset A or asset B, we could quickly reconfigure the schedule with the constraints and figure out how that rig would transition to asset A or asset B and work through the permits, work through the well readiness component, but then notably just verify that the timing would make sense, and then what that continuation would look like. So having the ability to do that quickly and rejigger those schedules, look at the different outputs that would come from it, and then quickly compare back and forth was very valuable. In those instances, something was researched, built out, executed, meaning we had to make a decision. We had to run through all the scenarios, get all of the subject matter experts to weigh in. That process took a week and a half. Without the planner, I think you're looking at a month. I mean, it's twice as fast or more. And certainly, depending on the complexity or the number of rigs or number of locations you're looking at, that would only exponentially become more valuable. In our case, we're a small organization, and still, it allowed us to quickly compile all those different inputs, compare the outputs and results from those two scenarios, and then make a decision. Yeah, so for us, the most critical integration was Aries. Second would be what I would just call generic Excel sandbox, right? Just making sure that we could quickly get data in and out. Super easy, super straightforward. Again, very responsive from the customer success and the support teams, just to make sure that we could gather all of our data, connect it in as smoothly as possible, whether it be manual or automatically. We were able to connect that data. So we were able to connect Aries really well and use that. We actually used some InterSight connections early on as well. That was also very smooth. We ended up ultimately moving away from InterSight. We didn't add enough value. But at the time, we had some InterSight connections. They worked very well. We were able to do a lot of the Aries integrations, also worked well. And then we did a lot of stuff with just Excel, because there's still a lot of Excel-based workflows in my world. Or there's other applications that don't play nice with others, but they at least export to Excel. And so we could use that as a common ground or at a junction. I would tell them that they should try Pod2 Planner first. And I say that not because people don't build really great tools, but because there's a lot of flexibility in the trial. There's really great customer success and integration people that can answer your questions. You may still decide to go your own route, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by how well those people will work to try to cater to whatever design constraints you think you have. And at the end of the day, I think you will find the tool to be very fast, very responsive, very clean, very well organized. And I think that you will spend a lot of money and have a lot of heartache trying to build your own tool personally. If you're trying to build a tool for a very bespoke, fit for purpose problem, you could probably do that. That's probably worth it. But the moment you have a problem that is going to evolve well beyond the confines of whatever that little specific issue is, that's when there's a whole set of people that have specialized skills that should really be able to do more than you ever could, right? I mean, and then that's when tools make sense to outsource it or find a third party or whatever you want to call it. At least in my experience. I mean, like I said, very fit for purpose. I get it. Trying to build a huge tool, why? It's just a lot of work and money and time that someone else has already. You get to share on the benefit of the communal software development exercise, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah, I mean, that was one of the strongest reasons, besides the planner just looking slick, being slick, the actual support and implementation and customer success that we have with Pod2 is unrivaled. I mean, there's a great tool at Pod2, but then there's great people behind that tool. And effectively, they help you hold your hand through implementation, through setup. If they can't do something to your satisfaction, they will quickly, step back, work through it, and come back with a solution, or at least tell you what the timeline to get that solution looks like. Because the tool's growing, it's always evolving, and that's important, right? You don't want a dead tool. We've all used Aries in the past, or continue to use it. Having people that support the tool directly and can give you answers directly is invaluable. Having people that can hold your hand through implementation, answer your questions, and then also comment on the development cycle and when things will be implemented or added, or just listen to your feedback and say, we hear you, we think we can get to that sooner than later, and kind of give you a timeline, is something that I'm frankly unaccustomed to with a lot of other traditional oil and gas software tools and organizations. Being a tight-knit group of industry veterans, effectively at this point, you guys all came from the parenting tree of oil and gas upstream planning. You dabbled in many different organizations and sizes, shapes, upstream, midstream, downstream, but fundamentally you cut your teeth in upstream planning, and that shows. It shows in how you develop products. It shows in how you guys implement products, and then it shows in how you gather feedback and effectively schedule out development, time, resources, and efforts into the various problems that upstream and potentially other midstream and downstream people have in this space. Pod2 is a group of upstream oil and gas planning junkies. You guys live and die by planning and process. And as a result, you've worked in some organizations that have built arguably some of the best tools previously. And you take them that knowledge and you take them that expertise, and you're now applying it by building, I'll call them bespoke tools, but I feel like you're building tactical tools for the upstream oil and gas planning space that arguably could be applied in many different facets and maybe even different industries. And then you're making sure that the process around those tools is robust as well. So meaning you're not just saying, oh, Kennedy, here's a tool, thanks, and moving on. You're making sure that the process to support the tool beforehand, during, and after is also smooth. And ideally, you're adding value across that whole chain rather than just dumping a tool in people's pockets. You're making sure that they actually have hopefully a better planning process